King County Council member Rod Dembowski is one of those calling for that. He's backing this plan to dissolve the agency, calling it a failure. And I want to make sure that people understand, too, this comes right after a separate audit of the county's Human Services Department raised concerns about tens of millions of taxpayer dollars being misspent or poorly tracked. So we wanted to get the council member back into studio, and he joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me back. And if I can, on the name pronunciation card, give credit to my colleague, Councilmember Peter von Reichbauer, who, when I showed up at the King County Council, he said, "Rod, you better put on your card how to say your name."
It's so
That's what
true,
he did.
though, right?
So, you got to make life as easy as you can for other people. And when you're in this business, the name matters. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. So appreciated. Well, so let's talk about the agency, which is a mouthful every time we have to say it. But we want to make sure we distinguish that this is a whole separate thing. This is the agency that was created years ago with the idea that homelessness is a regional problem that requires a regional solution. You have supported the model before. So what specifically pushed you from trying to fix it to saying, we're done?
Well, they've just had too many chances to get it right. When you stand up something new like this, and I had some concerns and actually worked to modify the legislation 6 or 7 years ago when it was first proposed by then Mayor Durkin and Executive Constantine. But you can have one stumble, right? Even in private sector, you can have a mistake. You can have employees who steal. You can have to change strategy. But, they had problems out of the gate, including like a $12 billion plan to end homelessness, which was pie in the sky, so devoid and untethered to reality. And then audit after audit showing that they were just unable to set up basic accounting systems, unable to track their contracts. In 2023, the state audited them, the county did. There was federal review. They responded, we're going to get our act together. We will fix this, we'll fix this. On their webpage today. Now we do another one, and you can see they have not gotten their act together. And so I don't think they're capable of it. And I think that this is the probably number one issue in our region. It has been for years, and it deserves a better response. If I thought it could be fixed, I wouldn't be suggesting it be shut down, but I don't think it can. And I don't think the model works. It separates responsibility from accountability with this little agency over here.
Whoa, hold on. You just said something. You said it separates responsibility from accountability.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because I don't think that used to be a thing. I think that it was all wrapped up in one, and let's try this and let's try that, and okay, it didn't work, or let's revamp this and let's have a meeting. Why the change? Because it feels like right now there's actually a change where people are coming together like, man, this is bad. What makes you talk about the responsibility and accountability?
I got to give credit to a former colleague who served on the county council, Larry Phillips, and he said, Rod, if you're going to be held accountable for something, when you go to the grocery store and your neighbors talk to you, what are you doing about this? You better have the responsibility for that. What we did here was separate those two things. I'm still held accountable for it. Every elected in the region is. But the responsibility to address it was sent over to this quasi-independent agency overseen by folks with lived experience, and then some electeds that got appointed to it. And that separation is I think, one of the fundamental problems with it, and why I don't think there's a mending. It has to be an ending.
Okay, I want to get there, because the thing that we keep trying to drill down to is this whole idea of who gets held accountable. When we break it down to see what they were doing, there were categories of other that were inexplicable. Still to this date, don't know where the money went, what was the result of that money. And you said, you can do it one time, but this has been repeated with this department, with this agency. Why?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. Identifying the audit, you had a new agency being stood up. I think you had some serious problems with initial leadership there.
They've had 5 CEOs.
Yes, and you had the pandemic came in, which slowed things down. You had a very complicated policy environment with a lot of people with a lot of opinions brought to the table about different ways and what ought to be done. And when you have that kind of conflagration or dispersion of views and systems, I just think you've set up a structure that is almost destined to not succeed. The more lines of authority and accountability you've got, the harder it is to drive results. If you've got a more focused organization where you've got policy direction from the top, the voters overseeing it all, then operational accountability down and budget to follow, the closer the front lines are to the top deciders, I think the less of these problems you have. Not that you won't have some, but this thing got just too scattered.
You know what it sounds like to me, council member? It sounds like that the frustration behind the King County Regional Housing Authority was there before, but I don't think that there was enough votes to maybe come across. And so there were folks there that did not agree amongst the council. Now, here we are today. Now, so far, you and another one of your colleagues have been public about your opinion about this.
Yes.
What people saying behind the scenes about this?
Gee, thanks for asking. I have been really pleasantly surprised, because you never really know when you take a kind of a strong stand like this. This is not a small thing. This is a big deal. And in politics, it's sometimes good to just stay out of the news, be quiet, go along, don't rock the boat too much, right? That's the safer way. This calls for more than that. And I have gotten emails and texts and calls from current elected officials, former elected officials, people that work in the space saying, thank you, this needs to happen. It's very positive.
It's funny. We both said the same thing. We got people that we've been talking to, and they're saying the same thing.
They're saying that, like, everyone has said this has been basically a stinking fish for a while, and people didn't want to call it out. And they're happy now that this audit is finally putting it into the news and putting a lot of pressure. But going back to what you said, that there's accountability or lack of accountability. One of the things that Seattle City Council President Joy Hollingsworth told us yesterday was that she wants to bring it in-house. So she's on the same page as you. You can't have this regional homelessness authority anymore with its track record. Bring it in-house. And she said the money is handled differently within the city. Is that also the case within the county? Because you've got this other thing where Human Services had the same issue. So what's the solution?
That's right. I mean, let me say, I think 95% of our contracts and operations, they have good oversight. They're done. You get some bad apples, and the brand gets tarnished. And so the timing on that, I'm going to just be honest with you, isn't great, right? Because the solution here is to devolve the authority back. The city of Seattle puts about $100 million a year into this thing, and what's pretty cool, I think, you see Mayor Wilson heading in a new direction on. We're going to build shelters because we can do it faster and they're more affordable than $500,000 permanent supportive housing units, which take a long time to build, cost a lot of money, cost a lot to operate. For a while, that was the primary solution. So she's changing the policy direction, and she wants to have the city dollars to go with it. She wants to be able to drive that. Same with the county. We put in about $44 million a year. We'll do the regional stuff. We won't leave Seattle entirely, but we'll work in the 38 surrounding cities and in partnership with them if this occurs. And that's what we did before. There are ways, if I can, Ursula, you open with the idea behind this was homelessness is a regional problem, needs a regional solution. We have a regional government, and that's King County. That's our role since 1968 when we formed the charter. We have structures in place. The Regional Policy Committee is chaired by Pete von Reichbauer, Federal Way. That has 3 county council members, 3 Seattle City Council members, and 3 suburban city council members. It's a forum that works to bring the region together. These kind of discussions and policies can occur there.
You're listening to the voice of King County Council Member Rod Dembowski here on the Gee and Ursula Show. Homelessness is a topic that everybody talks about, not just regional, but on a national level. It's a huge topic. In your opinion, in seeing all of the things, what are we getting wrong when it comes to this?
I really appreciate the question. When I came into this job, it's been 13 years now, it was one of my main motivators. I wanted to see if I could do something to, help folks out. And I'll tell you, it feels intractable. Mm-hmm. It just feels almost impossible at times. And you look around the country, has anybody else figured it out? Some jurisdictions doing better than others, but they've had failures in Los Angeles and Portland and San Francisco, but they're changing. I think working with this for some time, you've got 3 broad classes of folks who you see on the streets. one group economically down for a little bit, but fully capable with some little bit of help of getting back on their feet, getting into housing, getting reemployed, getting things going. A little bit of help gets them going.
Yes.
That takes a certain kind of response, right? Get them sheltered, get them a little financial support, get them job training or whatever. Another group, mental health and substance use disorder, the behavioral health problems. Those folks need a different response. They got to have more intensive care along with the shelter. And then, this isn't maybe politically correct, but you got a third group of folks that are fully capable of working. They don't have substance use disorder. They just don't want to play by the rules. And they're taking advantage of the other folks.
Yep.
Crime, dealing, harm. That needs a different response. That needs a law enforcement response.
That's right.
And we as a compassionate community started off, I think, a decade ago, giving the same response to all of it, which was you just need shelter or housing. I think we're getting to a spot where we see those three things, and I think the region's finally coming around to a little bit more rules enforcement. No, you don't get to camp in the park. You don't get to set up in the doorstep of the business. We just can't function as a community that way.
This is King County Council Member Rod Dembowski. I want to go back because one of the most frustrating things is, okay, so now this audit has uncovered this money. It's a separate thing, but now again we're talking about tens of millions of dollars. And if this agency is dissolved, what replaces it and what guardrails are put into place to not have this repeating and not basically helping to further the narrative that this is just the homelessness industrial complex and they're in it just to make money and not actually solve the problem?
Yeah, I want to say that I think there are a lot of good providers out there. You know, it's kind of our model. We as a government don't deliver direct services for the most part in this space. We don't own shelters. We contract with the Salvation Army. We contract with, say in my district, Lake City Partners Ending Homelessness runs an incredibly effective shelter on Aurora and Shoreline called the Oaks. They've got about 80 folks in there every night, and they're taking care of them. And they're getting them a fresh start. So there are some real success stories out there. Sometimes they're hard to see. And I think, you know, that work continues. It's just you don't have an unnecessary layer of a government with 100 employees consuming a bunch of administrative costs and time and off doing their own policy stuff, you know, as a separate branch. So hopefully it's leaner and more direct. There isn't a perfect answer. There just isn't. But that's kind of what I see.
Rob, Councilmember, can you give those three categories again? Because I truly believe that there's a lot of people, including this Rena from Bellingham, that believe that everyone on the streets has some type of an addiction. Can you give those three groups again? I have a question.
Sure. I think there's some folks that are just temporarily down on their economic luck. Maybe it's a mom who just got divorced, lost income, needs some help through a great place like Mary's Place. Come in, we're going to take care of you, we're going to get you reconnected. There aren't the substance use issues. Then there's the behavioral health group, right, with mental illness or drug dependency challenges. That needs a different care response. And then there's the folks that can work, know what the rules are, and don't want to, right? And they don't have the behavioral health, and they're not temporarily down on their luck. They're just out there taking advantage.
And for the record, I was a part of the first group out there unhoused because of economic situations. Now, here's my next question. When are we going to get to the point where we can offer more services for people that are barely holding on, right? That are living paycheck to paycheck? Because it seems like there's less for them. So it's less of a guardrail to prevent them from becoming economically out there. When is more things going to be put in place for that person? Like, listen, I have a job, I pay rent, but rent's gone up, I'm barely making it, I got $10 at the end of the month.
2 points on that. Number one is stop wasting money on things that don't work so we have some resources to move into that space, right? And that's what some of this is about with ending this regional homeless authority. Number two, Gee, I think you'll be happy to know there's been a good awakening around that in recent years where folks say the best money we can spend as a government is with somebody who is housed but is about to be unhoused. They're behind on the rent, they're behind on the utility bills, and $1,000 or $2,000 to get them caught up so that landlord gets paid and they're not facing eviction. That saves, as you know, all the catastrophe and the costs that go with it once my mom and her kids are out on the street or at Mary's Place. It gets way more expensive. So we are shifting there, and we do fund that at the county kind of basically in partnership with organizations like the Salvation Army. We'll get you some cash help. United Way, we'll get you some cash help to keep you housed. And that's, I think, the best dollars that we can spend. That's an easier population. I mean, the other ones are hard.
Absolutely, and some of them kind of mesh into each other as well. With the 30 seconds that we have left, what will it take for your call to dismantle the Regional Homelessness Authority? What would it take besides other members of the council saying the same thing? I mean, you've got it on the Seattle side, you've got it on the county side. What else needs to happen?
In short, it's 5 votes on the council majority and the concurrence by the executive, in our case, the mayor at the city. And then it's a process on the thing where it'll take some time to smartly and strategically wind this down and transfer operations over. The work has to continue, right? But we don't need to be running it through a separate layer of government that has very little oversight and control and has not been able to get the job done.
I know Ursula said we had 30 seconds.
We're going late.
Yeah. You know, I didn't think and I didn't believe anybody from King County Councilman would come on to our show. After Ursula and I had the conversation, Sophia reached out and you're like, yeah, I came on the show. You sat right here. You're in the hot seat. Why did you not duck these hard conversations? Why do you go on? Because some people duck them. Matter of fact, there's some folks that's ducking the Gee and Ursula Show right now. and by the
Whoever
way,
that is, I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
We'll still talk.
Why don't you duck it?
You guys are fair. I've listened to KIRO my whole life. I was born in Auburn. I grew up in Renton. I loved, back in the day, Dave Ross, that crusader for common sense.
Yes.
And Bill Yend and you guys are the voice of the Northwest, and you're connected to regular folks, okay? And regular folks need to hear from the folks that are working down at the government who they send there. And you're at this powerful medium. We need to be out there listening and taking feedback and taking the heat and explaining. This forum's an incredible opportunity to do it, and it's a privilege to be able to come on in your air and have a dialogue. Why wouldn't you say yes?